this is what I actually think. Demonstrating our opponent's hypocrisy is pointless.
I suspect not.
The reason why I say that is because the right has been doing that for a decade.
Yeah, but
maybe 2 decades nearly now.
No, it doesn't. It's been working really well.
No, because they know that they're hypocrites and they don't care.
Yeah, their leadership does, but the pawns don't. But demonstrating hypocrisy
the pawns don't care either. No, I don't think the pawns care either. So I really don't think they do.
A lot of them don't, but a lot of them could. Like, the people that follow the leftists are not all evil, soulless, mindless people. Most of them are doing it because they care, because they're compassionate, but because that compassion is being manipulated. If you demonstrate that the people they're following are hypocrites, demonstrating hypocrisy is one of the best ways to persuade someone that you're correct. And I think the more you do that, the more people won't vote for them every election. Even if they remain Democrats, they won't get out of their seat and go to the ballot, which is why they had to rig the election so hard in 2020. Part of the reason.
I don't think that's correct via the data.
Hypocrisy is something that people have been doing. Well, the data can be interpreted, but demonstrating hypocrisy is something that people have been doing since reasoning has been a thing. It's common in all historical debates. And I think there's got to be a reason for that. I do think it works a lot better than you guys seem to think. And again, as I've mentioned before, the progress we've made in the last 10 years in politics has been huge. You may not notice it because you've been living through it. It seems slow. But you think how many more people in powerful positions in this story, if nothing else as well, and our president and several presidential candidates, the entire GOP party shifted far in our direction in the last 10 years. Can you expect any of that to be happening in 2013, 2014, when we barely knew about these issues? We're making enormous progress. The culture war has been shifting so much faster than it would have been in previous eras.
I was asked, what are the data saying exactly? What I was referring to is that I made a video about it. There's an extraordinary amount of data that shows that people who lean left politically only care about having more than others in any circumstance. They would rather the entire society suffer as long as they have more. They are driven by envy. Predominantly, it is their primary and almost exclusive motivation, envy. When you understand this about leftists, and I mean this, because I'm not speaking this out of my ass, I'm not making this up, I'm just talking about this is what the data show. People who identify as leftists are motivated by envy, so that's why when I say that they don't really care about this stuff, they just want to have more than others, that's where you get into understanding their politics and philosophy.
Bit of a problem with that though, Aidan, because as is often the case with data, I understand that's what the data is, but as is often the case with data, the devil lies in the definitions. What is a leftist in that case? Are we talking about the entire half of society which leans Democrat when forced, or are we talking about people who openly and voluntarily identify as leftists?
Identify as.
So it's probably not a lot of the people that in an easier time would be independents 15%. And thus can be won over. 15%, I readily admit that 15% of the people that we're dealing with cannot be won over. But if only 15% of the public are voting for the Democrats, then they're going to have to vote. And if the rest of them are able to acknowledge hypocrisy, then what that does, even if they're driven primarily by envy, even if they are, it still creates that cognitive dissonance, that slight stress at thinking I have to get out of my seat and go to the ballot and vote. But these people are evil, but that hypocrisy I noticed, but all these things I've noticed, even though the press didn't tell them about it, it was indicated to them in a meme they saw on Twitter or something that was shared by their conservative uncle on Facebook or something like that. These things get around. That's how you persuade somewhat reasonable people, but not informed people. Little examples of hypocrisy like that can be huge.
But you actually, it's the opposite of what you contended there, Uzalu, and I'm glad you brought up the word cognitive dissonance, because that's exactly the problem. People who have invested themselves or divested themselves into some kind of left-wing politics, if you have voted for a left-wing politician and then you're upset with them, that creates cognitive dissonance. There's 4 ways that you can react to cognitive dissonance. Only one of them ever actually happens in realistic statistical format, like in terms of like ways that are measurable. Now you can say, wow, I was really wrong about that, and I'll change my opinion. That happens in like 0.1% of the time. People almost never recognize that. You can have people say that information was wrong, and I was just confused. You can have people say, well, they had some good points, but I'm still morally correct. And then people just deny all of them outright. What happens almost all times is the denial outright.
Yeah.
It never, ever happens that people recognize they were wrong, because that creates pain.
I didn't say they changed their mind.
Yeah.
I didn't say they changed their mind. I said that they didn't get out their seat to vote. The effort to get out your seat to vote, to go to a place and put a piece of paper in a box, is just high enough that if the people that you voted for last year have disappointed you and you hate them, I just might not bother. You might still tell your friends you're a leftist. You might tell your friends Trump is evil, but you're less likely to bother. This is borne out in the data of the election results. Democrats always, their problem is voter participation. It's people actually going out to vote. Even when they have the poll numbers, they don't get the people going out to vote. That, I think, is the key, because that is likely to be caused by cognitive dissonance, the stress of knowing that the people you support are actually not good. And I think even the people that are captured by the propaganda on some deep level realize that there are problems. They don't address them internally, they don't change their mind, but they do have that niggling sense.
That would hurt them.
And hypocrisy is a direct line to that.
Yeah, I agree with you. They know deep down that this but they can't bring it to their cognizant minds, because it would cause too much stress and cognizant pain. But I think they do know it. I don't think the people are that brain dead. Sometimes they seem that way, but I don't think they are.
They as you say, it's painful to consider it. They don't want to think about it, but they also don't want to work for the Democrats. They also don't want to get out of their seat and go and vote for them as much. They don't want to campaign for them. And so the Democrats, it's by degrees. It doesn't have to be absolute. If there's less people who want to do work to support the Democrat idea, the Democrats are going to have slightly less competent people campaigning for them. And then slightly less the next year, and less the next year. Less people get aware of the message, or people get aware less well. It just decreases over time, and just changes, just sinks gradually with every little bit of hypocrisy. It sinks it a little bit more, and every new meme that mocks them sinks it just a little bit more. And the accumulation of that is that eventually it gets so low that they absolutely cannot win except by cheating. That's where we are now.
That's already where we're at. I mean, that's what they were doing last time. So even if they have just a few people, like that's where I raise my questions at. If they're already going to fortify, they've already been, they're more than happy to fortify. They're more than happy to fortify twice over. They've had no compunctions about it. They don't give a damn. And they've not been caught for it, because if you try to check them for it, then you're a bigot and you need to be shut down, et cetera, et cetera. Why stop? Why stop? Why be discouraged? Why be discouraged?
Why haven't they killed Trump yet? Because they are actually afraid.
Because that's a really, really bad move. Even they know that that's a stupid.
Like
they're afraid, but that's only because they're afraid that if they killed Trump, it would be too bad. Sorry, go ahead.
Exactly. Their plan relies completely on using existing legitimacy, supplanting and utilizing existing legitimacy. Who announces the election results? Who actually determines who won the election? Well, there's plenty of right answers, but the real answer is the press, sadly. So the left claimed that legitimacy. They now own that legitimacy. And the political halls of power, they own most, though now not all, of that legitimacy as well, the presidency as well. The military, who reinforced Washington, D.C. after the rigged election. The Democrats and the establishment own those forms of legitimacy. At this point, they don't own that much else. They own, like, a lot of corporations own them, of course, but legitimacy is what they need. If that legitimacy is threatened, then they can lose everything. And if they kill Trump, I'm not
sure they care anymore.
Well, they're pretty close to that point. But if they kill Trump, or if they rig the election twice in a row, so, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, I think the American people will take more notice, much more notice, exponentially more if it happens twice, especially if it's that noticeable again. But it's still a crisis, but I think people will take more notice. They start to lose that legitimacy. That's what they depend upon. If they lose that legitimacy, if people realize this is too evil, we have to destabilize the systems themselves and reform them in a new image, or reform them as they should be, then the Democrats lose everything. They're tiptoeing up to the precipice, trying to get as close as they can, doing as much evil and short-term beneficial stuff to themselves as they can, not thinking about what they'll have to do next year, because they just have to survive now. If they hadn't been doing these insane, aggressively authoritarian and evil things for the last 10 years, they would already be out of power. They would have been out of power 5 years ago, at least. Trump would have been elected, and that would have been it. But they decided to keep going further. They cannot keep escalating like that. And they know there's an upper limit. They're being very careful to release information slowly so people don't get too annoyed all at once. And it seems like they have a lot of power. But the reason it seems that way is just that they have lingering power, and they're extremely careful with how they use it. But that will end. These kinds of regimes have ended in the past. There is nothing about the patterns of society today that leads me to believe that we are not going in that direction.
I certainly hope you're correct. However, I'm far more pessimistic about the state of humanity and the state of the average American voter. And I think that the average American voter is going to... What is the average American voter? Why do they vote for Democrats? Money. You're going to give me more money. You're going to give me, and they doesn't matter if they, this is the problem with democracy, and one of many problems with democracy. It doesn't matter if they actually see it in their wallet. The Democrats will say, we'll give you more money. You're going to have more money. You're going to be less taxes, and it's going to be way better. And they're not going to see that because they didn't see it over the last 4 years. And I know that they didn't see it, but I think that a lot of people are so politically blind because they don't pay attention to politics. You have to understand that we're in a total fucking weird echo chamber to a certain degree.
Yeah.
In that we are people who pay attention to politics. The average person who just goes to work, does their job, and then comes home and watches sports or watches the next horrific Marvel TV show. Holy shit, I watched Echo. Oh my God. That guy, he has no interaction with politics whatsoever. He just thinks, well, oh wait, the Democrats are promising me more money, less taxes. My taxes are so high. I'd like to be, or not less taxes. I'm going to make more money. Everything's going to be cheaper for me. My taxes are going to go up, but they won't really. They don't advertise that part.
Though I will readily admit,
the economy's going to be better.
Yeah, though I will readily admit that the majority of people in a country are not thinking things through rationally and doing research. There are other ways to be correct than deep rationality, and people's common senses and their instinct for things changes over time. And if they see a charismatic, bombastic, friendly, extremely popular man promising things that people say he did last time, and you felt like you had more money back then, they'll vote for him. Like that's no problem. And that stuff matters. Charisma links directly back to important things. So I think it's possible to overestimate the average voter, but I think you're underestimating them to a large extent. There's also the idea that I think
it's just from years and years of reading data.
Things are changing, though. I think you're also basing some of what you say on the notion of like the Republic will last exactly as long as it takes for people to realize they can vote themselves money. And I think you're sort of you're trying to bring that notion up in this, but that doesn't appear to have been true. There's been many opportunities in the past for that to have been literally true, and yet I don't think people do vote on the basis of I'll have more money. At least not Democrat voters. They vote on the basis of what makes them feel good, and it's not just money. It's about ideas and principles and like what they think should be done. And usually from Democrats, I think the moderates is compassion. That's why voting makes sense, because normies will only reason on those things, and democracy acknowledges that.
Right, and voting on compassion is cringe.
No, voting on compassion is sometimes fine. Cringe. Voting on compassion is just as cringe as voting on reason, because reason can be wrong too.
No. Reason can be wrong, but reason is far less wrong than compassion.
No, it's not. When reason is wrong, it can go a lot wronger. All of socialism's worst catastrophes have been due to failures of reason.
True.
Compassion can be evil, of course, when it goes wrong, but it can't be anywhere near as bad as reason can do. Compassion is a bit more stable. Obviously, it's nowhere near the most stable. Experts can't be trusted either. Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah. You know what? Never mind. Yeah, I take back that statement.
I would much rather the majority reason with emotion than reason. Much rather. We can trust ourselves to reason
that's how we get women.
fairly well. Well, you could argue that, but the way that women reason is, in the moment, it seems illogical, but I think on a grand scale, it actually makes a lot of sense. It's the kind of thing where
I cannot disagree stronger.
When have women ever made a logical decision that made sense longitudinally or short term?
Because I think, again, if you look at it on an individual level or on the short term, and sometimes on both, you can argue it doesn't make any sense. And yet, I mean, for one thing, the other thing I have to say is that women have evolved that way. There must be a reason for it, but I think I can explain that while men deal with the universe in a direct way, which means that they're directly and literally right more often, the more autistic way, women deal with it in an indirect way. And there are many things that women advocate for and argue to do, which create patterns of society, which you can't see it happening, but on a very large zoomed out scale is keeping it adaptive. And is keeping it, I have never
observed this. From an evolutionary psychology perspective, I have never observed this. But
can I just translate this into can I translate this to what he just said into women speak for you?
Into women speak for why I have not observed this in an evolutionary psychological perspective?
Yes, because no offense to Uzalu, but he said that in a very wacky way, and I think I can simplify it down in a very simple way.
Okay, and you can translate it to me in an academic sense, okay.
But also I'm going to translate it away from that. No.
Okay.
Men control society, women control the home. Public sphere versus domestic sphere.
There's truth to that. It's orthogonal to what I said, but there's truth to that, yeah.
I didn't think that was what you were saying, though, Uzalu. I thought you were saying that women had this, because you were saying that women had this kind of like greater kind of
obviously they're not aware of it. It's evolved, but why would people have emotions? Why would emotions have evolved if there wasn't something to them? They are a regulating system, and they don't always make sense on the small scale. Why, when you get angry, do you sometimes break things? It's damaging. It's damaging your own stuff for no reason. Well, it's an indicator and a deselector, a social indicator and a deselector. It's filtering for better qualities. Evolution has deigned that we act in a way that forces us to be our own natural deselectors, our own predators, even when the environment won't provide it. It's the same reason why psychopaths exist, I suspect. And this emotions are valuable for that and all of those things, and women are much more attuned to that way of being. The indirect, the longer term, the imperceivable, and
I don't think that's actually accurate. I understand what you're talking about. I know the exact thing that you're talking about, in terms of obviously we evolved emotions for a number of evolutionary reasons. However, I don't think that women are generally speaking very good at it comparatively actually to men. And I'm not trying to like do some red pill shit on people. I just think that women, generally speaking, we require men. We require men to temper. If you do not have a man there to temper a woman's emotions, then her emotions are not useful in predicting anything,
Aiden,
or in being able to determine anything.
We're talking about indirect and long term.
Okay, I'm talking about indirect and long. No.
But it's useful to filter for situations where you do get the man and the woman coming together and finding a balance. That's exactly
the only way that it's useful.
Your point is supporting what I said.
Okay, cool. I agree then. But I it's not women in isolate.
There's way more than one
with the
layer.
Stupidest, craziest shit.
Yeah.
Women on their isolate will come up with stupid, crazy shit that doesn't make any sense.
So will socialists.
Exactly. Well, women. Yeah, you repeat my point.
Well, socialism is a more sort of feminine ideology, but men adopt it as plenty.
All leftist ideologies are feminine ideologies.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But I think we figured it out. I think.
Yeah, we got to an end of that. In that case, we may respectfully disagree on some aspects of this, but let's read on and see what we think.